I'm James Weir. I started working at Valley in 2015, 2016. I worked at Storefront Safe Haven. So I started out doing homeless outreach, and I'd have to go out like on Rio Grande Street and help clients get into housing. And back then it was kind of different. It was just house.
That was before Operation Rio Grande.
It was actually before. So the day of Operation Rio Grande, the night before, one of the old clinical directors slacked me and said, "Hey, there's this thing that's happening tomorrow, and I need you to be down on Rio Grande Street to be Valley's kind of face along with this other employee." And I said, "Okay." So I was down there on Rio Grande Street like that day it happened.
Wow.
It's pretty intense to see people get arrested just like that.
So what do you do for Valley currently?
So right now I work at Core Recovery Management, more specifically, and I kind of help out at Epic Recovery Management. I'm starting to help out with Valley Phoenix too, and I'm doing the same thing that I did in 2016, just trying to find clients appropriate housing.
So when you say appropriate housing, what do you mean by that?
Like we were talking about a second ago with that client, right? Like I saw him when he was sleeping in a car wash, right? And then one thing I forgot to mention is he had been housed before, right? He'd been housed in a couple different scatter site apartments, so apartments in the community, where he was kind of left unsupervised, for lack of a better way of saying it. Now he's in core housing, where there's at least 2 times a week apartment inspections. He's expected to come here to group 2-3 times a week, depending on what phase he's in, right?
Yeah.
The scatter site apartment didn't work for him because he was left unsupervised. He was left with like little to no follow-up services, more particularly case management now.
Didn't have the resources you needed.
Didn't have the resources. So when I saw that happen, that was about 2018. And I transferred over here to Core, 2021? And I've been at Core for about a year and a half now. And my old supervisor was actually taking me out to show me the different apartments, the different master lease apartments that Core has, and I bumped into this client. I got to talking to my supervisor about him a little bit, and he's been in Core housing doing just great for a couple of years now. Yeah. So that's what I mean when I say like appropriate housing.
It literally comes down to making sure that somebody's housed somewhere where they have the resources, the assets, the supports that they need.
Exactly, and this guy's doing phenomenal now. When I heard he was working a job, I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Yeah. And I actually felt bad because I thought I knew this guy very well, and I never thought this was the type of guy to hold down a job.
Sometimes.
Much less like a manual labor job where he's like picking up furniture and that's one thing, but then to hear he's also paying his rent on time.
So he's thriving.
Man. Yeah, he's not sleeping on the ground anymore. He's actually sleeping in his bed. So that's what I mean when I say like appropriate housing.
That's awesome. So there's a change coming to your role. You're moving into, it's hard for me to articulate it, so perhaps you can explain it.
My job responsibilities are changing a little bit now because I think what we're starting to see happen is stories like that are starting to happen, like where clients are getting into housing. And I'm sure you read the paper how tight housing is, right?
Oh, housing's abysmal here.
When I heard that the high needs hotel is getting turned into housing and all those people are going to be discharged, I was so my new job responsibilities are just going to try and help case managers in different units, more specifically Core, right, and ATI, help clients get into the appropriate housing. Because what we don't want to see is that. Like, we don't want to see guys like that client I just mentioned get into these housing units and then fail out of them with the market already as tight as it is. Because I'm working with the Phoenix client, and it is never, I think this is going on like a month now. And I just got word back when I caught you outside that the tenant was finally approved.
I was a case manager when I first came to Valley, and the number one thing that people that were referred to me for services that needed help with was housing. And in most cases, we were looking at 1 year to 2 years for placement in appropriate housing, or not even appropriate housing, just whatever was available.
Just housing period, yeah.
And if you have somebody, this is for folks who haven't worked with anyone in recovery, one of the foundations to recovery even working is stable housing.
Stable housing, no, you're right.
Right. So you're going to be an asset for case managers who are struggling finding a place for someone to live.
Yeah.
Well, that's phenomenal.
Housing's always been really tight ever since 2016, and I haven't had to go hunting for housing in a couple years, seeing how as I transferred over to Epic, and then I'm over here at Core, and Core has their own housing, right? So, but now that I'm getting back into it, I'm starting to see it's getting really tight than when, like you and I first slacked when you were case manager, right? It's getting extremely tight. So one thing I would tell people is make sure your client's ready to be housed. I'm talking to these different landlords now, and they're saying to me, James, we'll take a chance on your client, and we know nothing's written in stone, but all we need is support from the case management team.
Right.
So I've been giving landlords my direct telephone number. I mean, not only are we hearing that from landlords, but we're hearing it from different housing authorities too. So all my job is to kind of help alleviate that stress a little bit. If your client doesn't do too well in a master unit, they may do well in HARP housing.
Right.
I mean, if they don't do too well in HARP housing, maybe they need to go to treatment for a little while.
We're living in a region where studio apartments are going for $1,200 to $1,400 a month. What do you think is going to happen in the state of Utah for folks like these clients that you're working with to be able to thrive and to be able to have the basically fundamental human right of a roof over their head when rents are that high?
Accountability. Like I said, here at Core, like twice a week, 3 times a week, home inspections. Mm-hmm. So if the client's doing something wrong or their heat's off or something like that. I was telling someone on Slack last night, I was like, wherever there's poor people, there's always someone who's willing to make a buck off of them.
Yep.
I hate how that sounds. I was at dinner the other day with my partner, and we took a drive by the Old Salt City Inn, right? Mm-hmm. So it's now called the Villa 9. They've transferred that hotel into apartments, and like you said, rents are going for $925 a month.
Right.
In a studio that's probably half the size of this office that we're in right here. There's a little bathroom connected, a little hot plate right there. Just make sure your case management's on point. Make sure your client's therapy's on point. If you see a landlord doing something that's kind of iffy, contact the housing authority about it. They were out at Epic, what was it, on Tuesday, I think it was? Yeah, the housing authority was out at Epic on Tuesday, and they handed their cards out saying, hey, we want, communicate with us.
Right.
I mean, I think that's what we're trying to build now, is just that communication.
If anybody listening right now hasn't actually worked in case management, it is a job that is really hard to train people for because it's not the same job from department to department. Even within an agency like Valley Behavioral Health, we're going to see the 30 different departments that we have. Case management's going to be different at each and every single one. What would you say to a case manager who is struggling finding housing for their client?
You can reach out to me. I'm a little bit more responsive to my Slack than I am to my email. Because at the end of the day, I still like seeing clients too. And I still have a caseload. You can reach out to me. You can reach out to your team lead. You can reach out to your operations manager, but you can Slack me always. I may not respond immediately, but I will respond. And I've experienced it too. You get frustrated because you kind of hit a wall, right? Mm-hmm. And then you just say, well, I don't feel like I'm doing anything for my client. There's always going to be a light at the end of the tunnel. Clients are pretty resilient, I feel like, too.
They tend to be survivors.
Yeah, they tend. I mean, some of the things that would kill you or me like that, these people have been dealing with for years. Mm-hmm. Be that one constant for your client, because when you leave or when we leave, then they have to build that relationship all over again. Yeah. So I would wear hearing aids, and that's the first thing I tell people, clients, is, hey, feel free to yell at me, because I don't always hear, and I would hate to have you tell me something to make you repeat yourself again, something pretty personal. Be that constant is what I would say. We all go through the heartbreak of having somebody that you've been working with for months, even possibly years, relapse. How do you deal with that when that happens? So at Recovery Management, we bring them in and we talk to them about it. And we say, hey, what's been going on? If the client's truthful, we work with them. If they're, and I hate to say playing games, but if they're I know what you mean. Being manipulative, yeah, you know what I mean, then we still work with them. We just work with them with a different housing, right? We try and get them back into treatment. And sometimes we even have to evict them. And that's part's kind of hard. Well, like you're saying, though, that may not be the appropriate housing. But that might not be like sober living, for example, right? They get 3 shots in sober living. They get 1 shot in HARP. If clients are relapsing in sober living, there's a little bit more wiggle room than there is when you're on a housing voucher. Because if you know this, if you get caught doing illegal activity in your apartment, that's it. There's no. So you've been here for 7 years now, helping people and getting people, I love the term appropriate housing. What keeps you coming back day after day? Just that. I really believe in housing myself. I believe it's hard to practice your coping skills that Danny Hart's given you behind the alley of Subway on 5th South over there. Yeah. I mean, I think clients need appropriate housing, and that may include being in treatment. For me, I've always loved seeing clients, though. I've always loved seeing clients. I was a team lead for a while, and then I was an operations manager. That didn't work out too well. I talked to an old supervisor of mine, and I was like, hey, this is how I'm feeling. And she goes, James, go back to seeing clients. You've always enjoyed seeing clients. And I really did. I never thought about it as like a demotion or anything like that. I was like, hey, like, that's why I wanted to work at Valley. It was funny when I applied at Valley. I think it was like 2015, 2016. Salt Lake Behavioral got a hold of my application, right? Mm-hmm. And they interviewed me, and I was like, this doesn't look like a homeless place. I was like, this looks like a hospital. They're like, well, yeah, we're a hospital. I was like, well, I didn't apply at a hospital. Like, I applied to work with the homeless. I applied at Valley. I said, what agency is this? He goes, it's Salt Lake Behavioral. And I said, well, I don't want to work here. Like, I wanted to work at Valley because I wanted to work with clients. That's what keeps me going. I've always enjoyed working with clients. That's what I went to school for. I mean, that's what I've got myself in debt for. So I've always loved working with clients. I've always loved being that one. Me and my partner, like, actually deal with it on a pretty frequent basis. We'll be out to eat. And clients, oh, hey, James, hey, like, what's going on with my housing or something like that. Yeah. On our first date, actually, we were, some client, was like, she says, hey, what's going on here? And I was like, well, like, because I've been working in housing so long, like, these people know me. Right. I would just tell anyone, like, be consistent. Man, take vacation if you have to. Yeah. Take vacation if you have to. Josh is here too. He's my supervisor, and him and I talk quite often. And he's always saying, James, I know how you feel about housing and everything. But he goes, just make sure you're taking care of like James, because you're not going to be able to do anything else for any of these clients if you aren't getting your own affairs in order. So that sounds kind of rehearsed a little bit. No. But I really do think that's true. And get on a good team. Yeah. Get on a good team. I was in that leadership academy thing. This is when I was going through. It was kind of making me question whether I wanted to stay at Valley or not. And I heard Tara A. Artin say it, almost like she was speaking directly at me. And she says, if you like Valley as an agency and you just don't like the department you work in, transfer. Transfer to Kids, transfer to Epic, transfer to Storefront, transfer to Pingree, but if you like Valley as an agency as a whole, for the most part, just transfer. I mean, it was almost like she was speaking directly at me, and I went and I stocked an operations manager over a different unit I stocked, and I was like, hey, I'm feeling a kind of a way. Can you help me out here? Like, I just want to see clients again. That's all I want to do. And she was like, yeah, go ahead and apply, and we'll get you interviewed. With as many departments as we have, you could transfer to a different department every year. Well, and it's so big. No. 30 years later, you still wouldn't have worked at every single department. Yeah. So. Yeah. And next thing you know, you're like Mike Wyvinkle or Curtis Madsen, right? And I actually caught him the other day. It's funny. You said, I said, now that you're leaving, Curtis, you have to tell me the secret. Yeah. He goes, stay seeing clients. Yeah. Stay seeing clients, James, and make sure you have coworkers that are good coworkers. Yeah. He goes, you can always transfer to different places. Guys like Vyvinkel or guys like Curtis, I'm trying to think. There's a couple other people. People like Cheryl Nelson, what I'm saying, who have been here. I think Isabel Cook's been here for something like 10 years or something like that. I'm like, yo, that's what I want to be like right there. Valley as an overall whole has been good to me. They have. It seems to be kind of a consistent theme. You're talking about appropriate housing, and now you're talking about appropriate employment. It's, whatever works best for you, right? Yeah. Awesome. Like, if you like seeing clients, man, go see clients. If you doing billing, go do billing. Yeah. Like, if you're good at fixing things, like, you could go and work at property management. I can't fix anything. Like, you know what I'm saying? But, I mean, there's guys like Nathan Potter. Like, I see guys like Nathan Potter who are, like, great at fixing things. I mean, he's at D-House Toot Sweet whenever the plumbing explodes or something like that. He's always got a smile on his face. I would dare say that there's a place in Valley for everyone. I'm sure you can find a space in Valley that suits you. Like, if you don't like working up at the administration building, then go down to Epic Recovery Management. You know what I mean? You started out as a case manager, right? Mm-hmm. But your thing is like this, right? Always has been, yeah. Yeah, see what I mean? Yeah, I mean, there's always a place for someone to have Valley. Well, somebody recognizes somebody who's, say, really good at housing placement. Well, that's just not only a benefit for the company and a benefit for you being in a position that works for you, but you're helping more clients that way. Housing seems to be the number one issue for almost anybody that was placed with me. And then after that, it was mid-management, or after that, it was making sure they had the appropriate transportation to get to their doctor checkups. But housing was always number one. Reach out to me, Reach out to me. We'll figure it out. Awesome. We'll figure it out. James, thanks for talking with us. Yeah, thanks, Lee.